Gentlemen, good evening. First follow podcast in quite some time. Um, think it would have been a different climate we were recording it in if we'd recorded it before the Motherwell game rather than afterwards. So to divert ourselves away from that particular debacle, what I wanted to do was just I don't think we did one, or certainly we would have done one just after he arrived. With Danny Rowe, now that we've had a chance to see him, and you guys have had a couple of chances to see him up front in press conferences as well as on the television. So rather than talking about his tactics and his player selection, we'll come to that in a minute. But Davey, how have you taken to Danny Rowe? Do you think he's the leader we need?
Oh, there's a good question to start a podcast, Mark. I think he he comes across really well. I think that he has made every effort to understand the club, which his predecessor did not do. I think that when you meet him in press conferences, he does try and represent the club in the way the club wants to be represented. Um, when it comes to the job itself, I think that's a slightly different question. But if you're asking me, does he is he a man that wears the blazer well? Then I think he is. I think he certainly he speaks well. He seems to carry himself in the media well. He doesn't seem to be the kind of manager in press conferences who falls out with people very much. He does seem quite diplomatic to me, which I'm not sure on occasion whether that's maybe such a good thing. If you look at the
His, his,
really
pre- his press conference last Friday was 18 minutes and 7 seconds, which I think even beat a Philip Clement press conference that tended to go on interminably.
Yeah, well, certainly that on Sunday there actually was the first one I've been at that he took exception to a question and was a bit prickly, which is the first time I've actually ever seen it. And when I think back to previous successful Rangers managers, they all had a little bit of that. They all a little bit of fear factor, and I don't think he's got that. I hope he develops it because I think he's going to need it in the months ahead if he remains in post. Because if the season ends the way I fear it might end, then I think he's going to be under pressure if he is still the manager at the start of next season.
Lee, your impressions?
Yeah, I think it's quite similar to Davy. I made no bones about it. I was completely against the Russell Martin appointment in the first place. After meeting the man a couple of times, I didn't like him. Like, I didn't take to him. So I think immediately Danny Rule was a huge upgrade in that respect. Just the way he carried himself, the way I feel like he's respected the support, the way that he respects the club. As David just said, he wears the blazer well. You know, you look at him, comes into the room, and yet you think, yeah, I'm happy that this guy is representing my football club. Even just the little things about the way he acknowledges people in a room, the way that he goes about his business. And I think it's funny because David just picked up something there about him being quite prickly, and it's one of them where you do need to find a balance, I think, because you can go the other way. Like I thought, like at the end of Gio's term, for example, towards the end with Clement, it was getting ridiculous, like to a point where you felt like you couldn't ask him anything because he was just going to go in the huff.
Mhm.
But I think you need a bit of that. Like, I think Steven Gerrard was the master at it, wasn't he? He just he knew how to control everybody. He almost knew what was about to happen to the journalists that asked him the ridiculous question just by the way he looked at them. But I have to say that Daniel can still develop that because he is still young. He's still in his 30s. This is the first time he's been under this sort of pressure. I know that he's managed, a bit of a sinking ship in Sheffield Wednesday and had to deal with lunatic owners, but he's never had to deal with this sort of pressure. And I think he is going to have to realise that very quickly that it is a bit of a goldfish bowl, and that he possibly is going to have to get a little bit more fire when it comes to stuff like this. So yeah, I mean, I like him. I like him as a person. You say we're going to come on to some of his the on-field stuff, but certainly as a man, and as a manager of Rangers, yep, I'm fairly impressed with him so far.
Davey, there's been quite a few times this season where his team selection has caused quite a bit of consternation. Um, Not just his substitutions and how he's made them and when he's made them, but the actual starting 11 where people are querying, well, why's Tav out, why's Suter out? Some and other positions around the pitch where, is it two up front, is it one up front? In terms of his team selections, have they worked? And what style of play would you say is developing? And then lastly, if you can go through his signings, shall we say, the four signings in the window. I think the jury's out in Scov Olsen, whom I actually quite like.
Mhm.
But your impressions on the style of play and the way that he's managed the squad that he's inherited.
I think you need to split his reign as manager into two parts, really. So we need to remember what he inherited. 'Cause I think that's always something. It's almost something that people keep talking about how far behind we were, but I'm not really talking about what the league position was. I'm just talking about the squad that he inherited and what a tactical mess that they were at the time. There was lots of new players who were playing in a shapeless mess under Russell Martin. And when he took over, to his credit, he made Rangers organised again. Very, very quickly, actually. Um, he had the team not playing entertaining football, not playing cavalier football in any way, but we were racking up clean sheets, we were winning games, and he got us back into contention again by being pragmatic, really. Um, he, he played three at the back for quite a bit because had been conceding too many goals, so he decided priority one was to stop conceding as many goals, and that certainly worked. But I think from early on, he's been hamstrung by the lack of a consistent goal scorer up front. So during that period of time, he relied a lot on set pieces. We were squeezing through games 1-0 a lot. And I think when you get to January, and this is the second half of his tenure, if you like, when he got us back in contention and the board backed him, if you like, with significant spending in January. And since then, he has tried to be a bit more expansive. And you can see that we don't play three at the back anymore. It's always a back four. You can see that he's quite recently with actually two strikers, but he's certainly been more offensive. And their goals for column has certainly improved over that period of time. But the contrary to that is that we have conceded a lot more goals than we did in that previous period. So when you come to style of play, I'm not actually 100% sure yet. I've got clear in my head what is Daniel Rühl's preferred style of play because I think he's been scrabbling with a squad that he wouldn't have picked. As in most managers when they come in during the season, usually it's because the team has been failing. Rangers spent a lot of money last summer on, let's be honest, players who the jury is out, and the majority of them. There's one or two who have stepped up, but unfortunately, the majority maybe haven't been as successful as we want them to be. So January was important. We all said we wanted a left back. We got one. That left back, unfortunately, has not been available as often as we would want him to be. But when he has been available, I think he's been very impressive. He brought in the winger that you're talking about that we all said we needed for the right-hand side. And he unfortunately hasn't lived up in any way to the expectations that we had, and I think Danny Rühl had as well, because in recent weeks when we have struggled in games, he hasn't turned to Scott Wilson from the bench. He didn't do it on Saturday against Motherwell either when we were desperately wanting a goal. So it looks to me as if the manager hasn't really been impressed enough to even bring him on over the last little while. Chukwane in midfield was the signing that surprised me the most because a defensive midfielder wasn't really in my list of priorities in January. It suggests to me that probably it means that Raskin's probably going to go in the summer and that's his successor coming in early on. I think he's been decent without being pulling up trees. I think he brings physicality to the middle. I think he has had more good games than bad, but he's not a player that's going to win you matches. He's not a player that's going to win you a title.
Mm.
And finally, in the Deary, we all desperately wanted a striker. I mentioned earlier on that we don't have a consistent goal scorer in the squad. We were struggling to convert chances up until January. And I think we did need a striker coming in. The striker that has come in, I'm not sure that he's an actual goal scorer either. I think he's more of a leader of the line, hard working, good hold up type striker as opposed to a goal scorer. Which I think is why we've ended up playing two up front over the last little while. So that long convoluted answer, I don't actually think there is a Danny Rule style of play yet. I think he's tried to be pragmatic. He's tried to find a way of turning a pretty weak squad into one that's going to challenge. And I think if we get to the question of do we think he's the man to take us forward, I think one of the things that sits in the credit side for him, if you like, if for those who would want him to stay on next season, even if we don't win the league or if we finish third, is that he has had to try and challenge for a title with a squad that has never been good enough, really. And I think if I was him, I'd be saying I would want the chance to mount a challenge with a team that I can actually build and create rather than one that I've inherited.
Mm-hmm. Lee, your thoughts in the same kind of general area, and perhaps starting off with the thing that's been driving us all nuts is the number of times that we're going behind in games. Immediately you're on the back foot. The number of times we've done. I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's fairly incredible this season.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. First of all, I think I agree a lot with what David said. I mean, I don't know. Is it an attitude thing with some of them? Like the Raskin's always it's always something that sticks in my mind. It was actually something David said. I can't remember if it was the start of this season, if it was halfway through. Feels like we say it a lot about him. But I think it was when we were chatting about Raskin's. We were chatting about Raskin's contract situation. He hadn't signed one. There was I think it was even before Russell Martin came in, and we all said his star is never going to shine brighter. And I think it was you that said that, David. And that's the thing. I still can't believe the amount of our supporters that look at him and have him on such a pedestal. I mean, I thought he had a nightmare again at the weekend. Nowhere to be seen. I mean, that someone had very kindly broken down Motherwell's first goal, and the pace at which our midfield jogs back at is utterly scandalous for a Rangers team going for a title. This is a guy who people want to be our captain next. I can't believe that. And it was the same. It was the same at Falkirk. Now, I know it was a tricky pitch. I know it was blowing an absolute gale. I live not too far from it, and I can absolutely confirm it was a really windy day and it was a really tough day to play football in. But I mean, look at the way Falkirk came out of the traps. The absolute prerequisite of a Rangers player is that you're ready to go and die for that shot. You're ready to go and run through a wall for the shot, not to wait till you're 2-0 down to then go and do it. And it was Saturday in particular. And I know you're talking in general terms about us going behind in games and being on the back foot, but that on Sunday, not Saturday. That on Sunday was embarrassing at points. I mean, we were lucky we didn't go in 4-0 down. That's how bad it was and how poorly we started the game. And yes, there's an issue there with the way we set up. Like I thought he got his team selection wrong. I didn't think it was a day for for taking someone out of midfield and playing a second striker. I didn't think it was a day for that. Just considering how well Motherwell have played, how competent they are in the middle of the park. But the attitude from some of them from the word go, I was just completely dismayed. And I'm not saying that they're not trying, but did the occasion get to some of them? It's hard to say because second half there was a noticeable difference. We made changes. The players had clearly been told that wasn't good enough. They came out the trap very, very well. Same with the Falkirk game. That the difference in the two halves was was there for all to see. But yeah, infuriating because it's goals that are so easy, and it feels that every goal we concede is easy in that way. Like if you think back to the Falkirk first goal a couple of weeks ago, it's almost a bit of a carbon copy of how Motherwell scored their first two or their two. The first two in the first half. Sorry, just so easy. No one tracking runners, nobody taking, making that tactical foul. Taking a guy out of the game, standing like statues, and the strikers have got all the time in the world just to tap it into the net. And I think you can argue as well. I think the goalkeeper needs to do better with at least the first goal. But yeah, infuriating. Like it is infuriating because and I think it's a combination of things. But certainly there is. I'll finish this because I feel like I'm kind of rambling a little bit. But I agree with David. I think we cannot get away from the fact that we've got a squad full of guys that are not good enough. I've said it many times in articles. Mediocre footballers will always let you down. They lack consistency. That's why they're mediocre. It's why they're not good enough. It's why they can produce now and again. It's why they will produce. They can produce that 45 minutes. They can produce those moments of magic. But now and again, they will let you down at some point. And see when 4 or 5 of them let you down all at once, you get beat. And I think that's what we've seen on Sunday. We just gave ourselves far too much to do. It was too late.
David, moving on for that, there's Lee's mentioned mediocre players, and I think if you look at how we've played this year, how Celtic have played, and contrast that with Hearts making the most of what they've got, and Hearts coming through a period when they'd quite a few vital players missing. The prospects to the end of the season now, I think the last few seasons, Rangers fans have kind of gone on this crazy roller coaster of hope and despair, within seasons. I had my amateur statistician hat on the other week, and I reckoned that, with 3 teams, 3 results every week, 5 games, that there was 14 million combinations of results. And then some smarty came in and said, no, well, because we all play one another, it's actually only 11 million combinations. So where we are just now, I think a lot of us are, in despair. If you look at the ease with which Motherwell, made chance after chance, I think that's understandable. But I am still pretty convinced that each of the teams has got screw-ups in them. And with 4 games to go, I'm still reasonably hopeful. But obviously, there comes a time after what's happened to the club since 2012 where you have to stop giving people the benefit of the doubt and start really bearing down on what they can do. So, in terms of how we end up this season, because, it would be if we finished first, second, great. Whoever finishes third are really left with the unpleasant end of a stick as far as Europe goes next year, and the lack of money that will not generate. So, there's a lot hanging on this. And obviously, if we win it, then, hallelujah. What are you looking at game by game? Are we still genuinely in the race?
Oh, we're certainly not out of it. You're absolutely right in saying that all 3 of the teams at the top of the table have looked like dropping points on a regular basis and have dropped points on a regular basis for most of the season. Probably apart from Hearts in the first 2 months when I think they had quite a decent long unbeaten run, didn't they? But certainly since New Year, it's almost like each team has tried their best to get themselves out of it, but the other 2 have been so bad that nobody has been dropped out. But the bottom line for me after Saturday, unfortunately, is that if I was a bookmaker, I'd be making Rangers third favourites as things stand. well, we're third for a start, but if you look at the fixtures we have left, then the two hardest away games in the league are our next two games. Um, so 4 points behind going to Tynecastle next Monday night. The long and the short of it is any result other than a win, and I think that's it. By I can't see us I can't see us making up a 4 or 7 point deficit in three games. So Monday is an absolute must win. There's no getting away from that. And then even if they do win, which I think is at best debatable, when you look at Hearts' home record, if you look at the momentum they've now suddenly started to pick back up, if you look at our record in crunch games towards the end of seasons, if you look at all that kind of thing, probably if you're a betting man, you would probably not say Rangers are likely to win at Tynecastle, but they could. You never know. But even if they do, the likelihood is they will then go to Parkhead somewhere between 1 and 3 points behind Celtic, with only two games after it. So they would need to win there as well. So what are they? You're the statistician. You just crunch the numbers. I don't know what the odds are in Rangers going to both Tynecastle and Parkhead and winning both games within 6 days with the
Well, I mean,
squad.
I've never, ever since I started watching the team, I've never really rated our chances at Parkhead. I've always gone expecting to lose so that even a draw feels like a win.
Well, we've won there the last twice, to be fair. So that gives you a bit of hope. We haven't beaten an O'Neill team yet, which I think is annoying because we should have at least two wins over him so far.
Mhm.
But I think the bottom line is we are.
Do you know, find around the way that things have gone around the club is that, like, for instance, I always liked Oxlade Chamberlain as a player, so really pissed off that he signs for them, and he's scored and all the rest of it. Alistair Johnson, nasty guy, nasty player, but you'd actually you always want somebody like that in your own team. So when when Johnson comes back, you're like, oh, he's one of their better ones that's coming back into the team. But it's to me it's gone into feast and famine where you're getting pulled this way and that um, by the tension of how the competition's playing itself out here. It's very difficult to steer a straight course because you're so driven by you're looking for that one factor that might make the difference. So, who have we got coming back? Look at our injuries, look at their injuries, look at Hearts having, three guys out, three vital players out, and then they're coming back into the team. I think that's really, um, what's driving a lot of the frustration amongst the fans.
I think if we talk about Tynecastle next Monday, um, Hearts will be absolutely. This Hearts will be so up for that. That's not. It's not true. Tynecastle will be absolutely bouncing. We'll have what 500 supporters there or something like that. It's going to be Lions Den stuff. How confident am I? If Alistair was here, he'd talk about how we would. This is the perfect chance for Rangers to show what they're made of, and how we would go out and win and prove everybody wrong. Maybe we will. Maybe we will. But as it stands right now, if you're asking me to predict how the last four games will go, I think we need to win all four of them to have a chance of winning the title. Simply because we are 4 points behind now with just four games left. And certainly, as a minimum, three wins and one draw, we certainly can't afford another defeat. 10 points minimum, 12 points probable. If you ask me, will Rangers do that? I'm sorry, but I think the answer to that, if I was be given just an honest answer, the answer to that for me would be no. I don't think we're tight enough at the back. I think we're giving too many goals away, and I still don't trust that we've got a big game mentality and a big game goal scorer. I hope to be
Lee,
wrong.
Lee, what David's just discussed is what the Americans call competitive tension, and for somebody like me who's watches quite a lot of Celtic podcasts, and mainly because I'm looking for material, with the latest episode of the lunacy. And one of the kind of themes that they've kind of brought out is, it was all Martin's going to win it and blah blah blah. Then that's changed to get rid of him as an old duffer, and then that changes again to this is going to be the greatest end to a season ever, and then it's gone from the braggadocio to, well, we only need to win these games by one goal. Which is a truism. I mean, if any of the three teams win all their games by one goal, they could win the league. But in terms of your own thoughts on it, we've bluffed our way, I think, through quite a few games this season, as have the other two at times. And do you see that changing in these last four games, or do you think there will be, as I tend to think there will be, is that there'll be some unexpected results in this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will. I think Sunday felt really, really big. Felt like a massive blown opportunity. But it's not the first time that's happened. So I think like across the three teams, I think both Hearts and Celtic, looking at it today, I think both Hearts and Celtic have dropped points in 12 league games. We've dropped points in 15 league games. A little bit of an anomaly because of the guy that we had in charge at the start. We dropped a lot of points early doors. Celtic will point to the whole carry on with Nancy as well. And Hearts, Hearts have been Hearts really. Like I think they've, as much as you've got to kind of admire what Derek McInnes has done, the way that they've stuck together, the way that they've battled through kind of some recent weeks where everyone, probably myself included, said they're going to start falling away. That they've still managed to go over the line. But the bottom line is they still have got a fairly poor away record. They've still got really, really tough games to come. I know that they got the victory on Sunday, notwithstanding that they were 11v11. I don't think they started the better team. I watched the game. I thought Hibs were the better side. Two of their players have then had the proverbial brain fart, and even with 9 men, they nearly held on. So I don't think it's a done deal that the league's over. I think there will be twists and turns to come. I guess the big thing for me now is this really is a cup final coming up on Monday. Like it's, if that had, when we get beat from Hearts at Tynecastle in December, everybody was saying that's it. We've done it again. We've fallen away. Danny Rullo came in. He'd worked to fight back from a huge deficit, and we went away and we lost the game. Fairly comprehensive, albeit I felt it was a decision went against us that day in terms of us going 1-0 up. But after that, I thought Hearts, were kind of worthy winners. They kind of ran all over us at points.
Have you been surprised by, so it's come for what, 40 years since the team out with the Old Firm won the league, and usually over those 40 years it's either been, Hearts, Hibs, Dundee United, Aberdeen have all had their times when they've had a good first half of the season, they're leading the table, they're splitting the Old Firm, but yet come around December time because of the smallness of the squad, injuries and suspensions really start to take their toll on them. That's when, normally, the Old Firm would overhaul them. I think we've got to say fair play to Hearts for sticking in there. I mean, you can say, well, Rangers haven't had a good season, Celtic haven't had a good season, but Hearts have done well. I mean, I think we've got to say fair play to them.
Yeah, I do. I agree with that. I do, and I don't really enjoy this whole narrative about, oh well, it's just because it's the three teams have been rubbish. Fair enough. Like maybe it hasn't been to the level that we've seen before, but certainly it's been exciting. And I think they can only beat what's in front of them as well. And I mean, I've watched them a few times recently, and there's a couple of games that really stand out. When they played Motherwell themselves a couple of weeks ago, it was a game they should have lost. Like Motherwell missed a couple of absolute sitters at 1-1. They were the better side. Hearts got the late penalty. They somehow held on, and then they won the match. There was another couple of games. I think there was one where they were away from home to Dundee. They went down to 10 men. Craig Gordon had one of the best saves I've ever seen In any game, absolutely incredible. So it's games like that where they do deserve credit. But like I say, I think that the big thing for me is timing at this point, because we blew it on Sunday, albeit a good second half. Now we've got these two enormous away games, and because we've just blown a game at Ibrox, everyone now feels, well, there's no way we're going to go to Tynecastle and win. There's no way we're going to go to Parkhead and win. But I don't think I've seen anything from Hearts and Celtic that makes me think, oh, wow, I'm really scared to play them. I felt there's been times this season where we've absolutely dominated Celtic, whether that's been at Parkhead, whether it's been at Ibrox, we've done it. Hearts, fair enough. I think the game at Tynecastle, they were absolutely the better team and they deserved it. But the most recent game between the two teams, I mean, it was 4-2 that day, but that was as good as we played in a long time. I thought we were really, really worth their win that day. They scored their 2 goals with their only 2 attacks, but I guess it comes back to what Davey's saying. And if they can still get 2 goals with their only 2 attacks at Ibrox, then what's going to happen next Monday? And they will be right up for it. We cannot afford to start a game like we've just started the last 2. And I do think, if we do go behind in those games, Hearts are a different kettle of fish, and that they're smart enough that they'll see the game out. I don't think, if they get 1 or 2 up, that it's going to be really difficult for us to get back into it. So I think, yeah, we absolutely can win it, but we need to get on the front foot. We need to win these 2 games. And I guess it's the time of it all. I mean, it certainly feels that everyone I'm speaking to, the attitude and the atmosphere around the message board, the lads on the supporters bus, everyone I'm speaking to, it just feels like we've blown it, and we've done so well to have such a great chance. But again, you look at it, if we go to Tynecastle and we win next Monday, we're only a point behind them. So on what planet does that mean we're out of it? It doesn't. So yeah, I'm not ready to throw in the towel just yet.
Moving on, after the cup game, which I'll come to in a minute, at Ibrox, I think there was a few of us. Certainly, I said when they bring out the new fixtures, Celtic will dream up something to cause confusion, to cause upset about the fixture. They can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. They think they've been smart. They think they've been clever. They're just, unpleasant, and what we've come to expect of them. So now that Celtic actually want to choose, so Rangers haven't banned the Union Bears, but Celtic now want us to ban the Union Bears and dance to their tune and get down on our knees and say, please give us the ticket. So the adjudication's on Friday. And I did one of my unusual things where I actually did some proper research for once and had a look at Section J of the SPFL rules, where it gives you the various options that they've got, which could be, because my view would be that you put down a marker, and if it was me, I would be saying, no fans, no team. If you don't allow our fans in, there'll be nobody there in the opposition dressing room that day. Now, it does say that you can punish teams with a points deduction. I tend to think that they would actually push that, even though it's not explicit as far as I can see. I think they would try and push that on to next year to undermine us again. But there are various options that are open to the club. Like, say, for instance, I will take your tickets. You don't want the Union Bears there? Fine, nobody's going. That's one option. Makes it very awkward for Celtic to explain that, I think we've also got to be that there is a natural tendency with how Celtic fans behave so outrageously at the cup game, breaking the police cordon, breaking down the disabled gates to get in, the vile stuff that you saw with them spitting and abusing the disabled Rangers fans at the West Enclosure, the pitch invasion, the fact that their team stayed on and were actually given selfies on the pitch when that was happening, right? And then this claim that member of staff was assaulted. Now it's members of staff and players were assaulted. Nobody was assaulted. No Celtic player, no member of staff was assaulted. But this is the lunacy that we have to contend with in Scotland. So if I throw it open to you both, if you were in charge of Rangers strategy going into this meeting on Friday, what would your lines of defence or attack be?
Well, I think this is actually relatively simple in terms of the approach towards the SPFL, because the SPFL's got a rule book and Celtic are breaking it. So I mean, I don't know whether I'm just naive and young and maybe expect too much of a football governing bodies, especially given their history. But for me, the rule book quite states quite clearly that Celtic are meant to give the opposition team a number of tickets. There's no reason why, from a safety point of view, that Rangers can't get those tickets, because 2,500 fans were there earlier this season without any bother. So it's not as if this is some new allocation of fans, some new number that's never existed before. So it's already happened this season. So I just think we say to the SPFL, there's your rules, just implement them. And if you don't implement the rules, what's the point in taking part in your competitions? Because your competitions therefore don't have any rules. Um, I think even Celtic fans, I think, are a little bit embarrassed with the line that their club have taken in this. Some of them, not
There's
all,
very
some
few
of them.
things embarrass them.
They know it's so transparent, though. This one is so transparent. And do you know what? I think Celtic feared that Rangers were going to go there and win the league. We can't do that now. After last weekend's results, it's impossible for Rangers now to go to Celtic Park and win the league. So it wouldn't surprise me if, now that that scenario is not going to happen, that the SPFL actually come down on our side for once and Celtic don't make too big a deal of it, because the scenario that they were trying to avoid can't happen anymore. But as far as strategy is concerned, I think it's really simple. If you've got a rule book and you don't abide by it, then there's no point in playing your competitions, because competitions without rules shouldn't exist.
Lee?
Yeah, I'm with Davey, to be honest. I'm not sure. Not sure I would go as far as you're saying, Mark, and not sending the team. But I think I do expect this one to kind of get thrown out pretty easily. I think you never ceases to amaze me that the brass neck that lot have got. Look, the cup game, people shouldn't be on the park. It's as simple as that. They should not be on the park. We all knew that Celtic supporters were going to invade the pitch the day before that happened. We all knew about it. Every one of us knew. We were all talking about it in the group chat. That was what was doing the rounds. If they had scored or they had won the game, they were going to invade the pitch. We knew that was going to happen. All of us knew that. So my biggest complaint about the whole day was round about the authorities, who they were the police were the very first people to release a statement to say how great they were in their in their response. And I mean,
I videoed it that day from the press gantry, and I think the video I took was 7 minutes long. So you're talking possibly 10 minutes after the first incursion from Celtic fans. And by the time my video finished, the police still did not have policemen at the 2 or 3 gates behind the goals where the
yeah,
Celtic fans had surged through. They were still coming and going as they pleased.
yeah,
Celtic had not taken their players off the pitch. So everything that's come from that, the usual Celtic apologists in the media try to, oh, the Rangers fans did this, Rangers fans did that. As far as I'm concerned, Celtic fans broke the police lines, kicked in the gates at Ibrox, abused the disabled fans, came onto the pitch. What do you expect?
yeah,
And if you look at the graffiti that was done that day, and it's everywhere in the Broomlin Road. Now, I don't think any of us are shrinking violets, But this obsession with the Ibrox disaster and 66 dead, that's a relatively new thing on
Yeah,
that scale. But it was everywhere, everywhere. And you know what? That was planned.
yeah.
There is no doubt that was planned. And the graffiti, down to the graffiti, was planned. So they've got questions to answer there. But what I will say, I mean, I've been for years a great critic of Rangers who seem to regard bad publicity and hassle from the authorities like the weather. You know, it's there, there's nothing you can do about it. But if you look at the inquiry into the cup game, Rangers have I think they've played a really good hand this time. So they've forced the SPFL, and it was Rangers that did this, to appoint an outside chairman, somebody with no connections to the Scottish game, nothing, absolutely clean. So what's that telling you? The SPFL is so in hock to Celtic that they cannot host that inquiry internally. I think that's a massive embarrassment for them that they cannot get a chairman for that from within their own body. And Rangers have engaged a QC to take into that. So I think despite the fact that the media is there, I believe that Rangers will really hammer into the behaviour of the Celtic fans, and I think because they haven't been shouting it, I think Rangers will go back to meetings previous to that, and I think you'll find that Rangers will have minutes which will say, if we give Celtic full allocation, there will be problems because this is a support that's out of control. They think they can do anything. Their club has nurtured them and enabled them for so long. And I truly believe that when it comes to that hearing, that Rangers will be able just to go with the minutes, bang, we told you what was going to happen. So
Well,
I
I think
think
that was talked about, wasn't it? That I mean, from people that know or are a bit closer to it than I am. But there was that discussion where Rangers had stated, but there was the whole debate around the allocations. I mean, wherever you stand on that, I think Rangers' position was quite clear. Why don't we go with what we've got just now? The safety measures are in place. Both clubs seem to agree to that. The police seem to have it sewn up. I mean, I wasn't at the last one, but I was at Parkhead the game towards the end of last season, and I mean it's complete overkill outside. If I don't know if either of you went, I don't think you did, but I was speaking to a cop outside. He was telling me there was 800 extra police officers on duty at Old Firm games now, and it's beyond the farce. Like for any of us that are, the three of us remember the days of going to the old Rangers end at Janefield Street, there when there was 18,000 of us, and you never seen any trouble. You just didn't, because there was so many of us, and everyone just kept to
when
their
you came out,
respective ends of
you
the
just
ground.
get marched back to the bus
There
stop,
was no
or
problems.
they marched you down through Dalmarnock onto the Clyde side, then
Yeah,
into town, and you never saw a
and
Celtic fan till you get into Central Station.
and my big problem with the whole all of this, Mark, with what they've just done recently is, I think we're all big enough to be able to say, right, um, it was massive provocation, but there was other incidents dotted about that involved our supporters that we were saying, well, that is completely over the score and it's not on. I think Rangers acknowledged that as well. We seem to be the only ones that took any sort of personal responsibility. And actually, Celtic didn't really say much about it other than to then allow their ultras back into Celtic Park. So as you've just rightly said, there was clear evidence that they tried to completely wreck the Broomloan stand. Their response was to let them back in, and then saying, yeah, we don't want the Union Bears there because it's been all their fault. And it just seems so petty, so childish. And as Davey says, it's so transparent about the reasons that they're trying to do it. They want us to say no, and for them to say, well, on safety grounds, we're not giving you any tickets. And that's what they're trying to do. It's completely pathetic. And I expect the SPFL to properly step in. And you're absolutely right. I think just going back to my previous point, I think it's well known that Rangers did state that they wanted to stick with the Euro allocation, and they were told either give them the full lot of the Broom loan, or we're going to try and enforce the full 20%. And I think from what we know, Rangers' hands were kind of forced on that. Maybe that will come out in the wash now. But for me, it's complete petty nonsense, and Rangers are absolutely right to tell them to stick that. I think, yeah, I don't think there's anything else to be said. I fully expect it to be turned down, but you never know. It's Scotland,
My,
so.
my, my last point would be whether it's the Green Brigade or the Union Bears, Old Firm games, tickets will end up in their hands because there's so many people. You're on a list, you get a ticket, but if you're a bit older and you don't want to go tours before the game, it ends up that these tickets end up in in the hands of the youngsters. You know what I mean? The ones that are up for it, and so they're going to be there anyway. What I would say to them is, forget the provocation. Celtic want you to act in a certain way. They want you to extract revenge or so-called revenge for what their fans did at Ibrox. And I would say, don't do what your enemies want you to do. Go in, enjoy the game as far as you can, but don't get into provocation and don't take the bait and don't graffiti things, don't vandalise things. Be different, be smart. So we can't force them to behave in a certain way, but that would be my advice. And I'm not talking here about the UBs. I'm just talking about the ordinary Blue Nose who might feel very angry about what they saw at the cup game. Is don't get angry. It's a bit like when the Man United fans first went to Liverpool, um, and they started singing "Where's Your Famous Munich Song" after the tragedy that the Liverpool fans had suffered, and there was silence, and that's the way we should be approaching this. But anyway, on a
Sorry,
hat,
Mark. No,
on,
sorry. Can I just say, I genuinely think that the events of the cup game are just a complete smokescreen here. And I agree with everything you're talking about in terms of what happened on the day, the behaviour of the Celtic supporters. I agree with all of that stuff. But the ticket allocation for the game a weekend, not this weekend, the weekend after, it's just a rule book thing. It's for me, it's nothing to do with what happened at the cup tie. There's already going to be an inquiry into the cup tie, which I'd like to think will identify where it all started and who the guilty parties really are. I'd like to think it does that. But in terms of who can get into the ground at Parkhead for this upcoming game, Celtic's ultras are getting in. Rangers must be able to determine who gets in with their allocation. Celtic don't tell Rangers or anyone else who gets their ticket. There's nothing in the SPFL rule book that says we give tickets to other teams, but we can tell them who's coming in. It's not there. So for me, it's a black and white rule book thing. And if the SPFL don't adjudicate in Rangers' favour in this, quite simply, we are in a competition without rules.
yep. But you know what? Things that shouldn't happen do happen, and usually it's because of fear and corruption. And I think we need to go through a lot more examples before we can ever possibly hope to say that the SFA and the SPFL are free of corruption and fear. Anyway, moving on to my second last topic, which would be the announcement of Tav's, shall we say, retirement from the club. I think because of the way things have gone in the last couple of years, he should have gone with a testimonial, a proper testimonial season. I reckon he's been very good for us over the piece, leading us in Europe. Haven't won the championship the way that we'd all hoped over those years. But I think he's been not just a good servant, I think he's been a great servant. And that's maybe been overshadowed by there's been a bit of a feeding frenzy amongst Rangers fans in the last couple of years where people want to blame everybody. They want to blame the board. They want to blame the manager. They want to crucify some of the players. And I think a lot of people have, in their rush to judgment, have perhaps overlooked a lot of what Tav's done for us. Davy?
I think that I don't think I've ever seen actually any Rangers player get the blame for as much of the things that have gone wrong on the pitch as he has got over recent history. He's got a credit column and a debit column like most long-serving players have got. His debit column does have in it that he hasn't won as many trophies as we should have done. It has got in it that defensively he is not the strongest defensive right back we've ever had, without doubt. But his credit column's absolutely enormous. It's huge. And we can talk about the number of goals he scored, which is absolutely sensational, even without penalties. But with penalties, it's incredible. He's Rangers' top goal scorer of the century, for crying out loud. But the number of assists he's got on top of that is even more than the number of goals. I think we add both of them together, it comes to just about 300, which is absolutely barking mad. But not just that. I think he gets so much abuse for not being a good captain, whereas I actually think over the years he has led at times that we've needed a leader. The big European games, penalty kicks, appearing in the opposition box in big games and scoring goals, his Old Firm games, whatever. I think that he has been a tremendous servant to Rangers. And you know how old I am, Mark. So I get brought up when Celtic were winning almost everything.
I can't count that high, Davy.
No, I know that. But the greatest right back I've ever seen at Ibrox was Sandy Jardine, without doubt. Sandy Jardine came into the Rangers team in 1967 and didn't win the league championship till 1975. Yes, he won a European trophy in there, but for a penalty kick, James Tavernier would have won a European trophy as well. In those 8-9 seasons, whatever it was, before he won the title, Sandy Jardine only won 2 domestic cups. That was it. That was it. He was, without doubt, a world-class footballer, but he happened to be playing in a team that came up against a team that was better than his team was, unfortunately. Now, Tavernier should have won more trophies. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think there are other trophies over the last few years that we should have won. But this one player never wins you anything. One player can't win you anything. Even Gaza and Laudrup needed players round about them. I think his response from a lot of supporters has been nothing short of ridiculous. And I'll give you a very quick example of it. See, on Saturday there, he didn't start the game. The first goal came down the right-hand side, our right-hand side. The second goal get knocked in at the back post where the right back could and should have been, and the right back wasn't there. I haven't read anything in our message we're blaming the right back for either of those goals. And I'll tell you just now, if Tavernier had started that game, he would have got pelters for both of them. I think that he absolutely deserves a testimonial. He's in the top 10 appearance makers in the club ever. I don't know if he'll get a testimonial now because if he signs for somebody else, I don't see how it can happen. But he deserves one. And I think he's been a tremendous servant to the club.
Lee?
Yeah, as you know, huge James Tavernier fan. I think I agree with Davey. Some of the comments put to him or fired at him over the years have been nothing short of ridiculous. Doesn't mean that it's all happy clapping and that he's perfect, because he's not. It was funny, Davey, just as you were reading there, I was reading the post that Alistair. Alistair loves a stat post, so I was just reading his post. It's 562 appearances, 144 goals, 148 assists. So it's a direct goal involvement every 1.925 appearances. That is incredible for a right back. And some of it is at the very highest level in Europe, getting to a European final. He was instrumental in getting us there. It wasn't just penalties he was scoring, as Davey, as you say, he was popping up at the back post and scoring massive goals in some of those matches. And I think I absolutely agree with you. I think a testimonial would have been the right thing. It's an interesting point because see the last 2 seasons I've said exactly the same thing about James Tavernier as that because you always ask us, Mark, at the start of the season, would you give Tavernier another season or is it time for him to go? And the last 2 seasons I've said exactly the same thing. I want him to stay. I don't think he should play every game because I thought he'd lost that wee yard of pace, and it's really, really difficult for any player to maintain the sort of heights that he got to the year we got to the final in Seville. But it's not his fault that we have got other right backs that are either made of glass or are not good enough. And that is the other two right backs that we've got in the squad at the moment. I thought Sterling picked a terrible time to have probably one of his worst ever performances in a blue shirt at the weekend because he did. He was really, really poor. But for me, that was one of the big mistakes Danny Rowe made. Tavernier should have started at the weekend, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that with the benefit of hindsight. I said that right before kickoff, he should have been playing in that game. Sterling was needed for Tynecastle. He was needed for Parkhead. Is he going to be fit enough now to play? Who knows? But it's surely not James Tavernier's fault that he's been asked to play game after game after game. And I think that in itself is an amazing feat. The amount of times he's available to play, the amount of times that he will play every minute, just about in every, the majority of games in a season is fantastic. And I had this argument with one of them about it, and he was saying, well, I think he's been a great servant to us, but surely you're only really a legend if if you can. It's all down to what you've won trophies. And I had to say to them, I was like, do you guys refer to McStay as Captain Loser? So I don't think you do. I think Paul McStay in his time as a Celtic player, and I'm loath to talk about them, but I think he was there, 15 years. He won three league titles, but he's regarded as one of the greatest ever midfielders. And I think, David, it'd be better if you were in the conversation because you've used a much better example with Sandy Jardine. Fortunately, I was too young to see Sandy play, but I think about the proper best right back I've seen at Rangers is Gary Stevens. But I'm at a point now where it's just in the honours that Stevens won and as that proper old school fullback. But I think Tavernier even brings more to the team than he even did just because of what he can do going forward. I'd love to see him get a testimonial. And I think I posted it in our group chat not so long ago. I wanted us to win this title so badly. For me, for you guys, for my brother, for all the Blue Noses, but I really wanted us to win it for Tavernier. I really did. And I know that you get slagged for that in the message board. Folk are like, what the guy that's running about in a Lamborghini, you want to win it for him? I do. I really do, because I think he has been a leader. He's never had. He's always been available, and he's sometimes been surrounded with absolute dross, and yet he's still producing those numbers. So I'll be sad to see him go. I'll be even sadder to see him go if it's without this title. But yeah, he'll always be at a place at Ibrox, that's for sure.
There's a wee bit of inverted snobbery because let's be honest here. If we were in their positions, the way these guys are driving Bentleys and Lamborghinis and big Range Rovers, that's how you would want to live your life as a footballer. So let's not get too, that's the rules of the game. So let's not get too carried away with that one. But I think he has been a great servant, and I think history will be a lot more kind to him than a section of our support is minded to be just now. So lastly, gents, wearing my Pastor Marvin hat here, I'm still believing. Are you just going to believe to the end of the season or let your heads roll? I still believe that it will go to the last day of the season.
I'll speak as someone who was at Easter Road and Helicopter Sunday but didn't believe beforehand. So I got a pleasant surprise that day. I think maybe I'm more naturally pessimistic, and I like to be pleasantly surprised rather than let down. So I'm going to say that I don't think Rangers will win the title. But I really, really hope that the next time we're on a podcast, the rest of you all were sitting laughing at me for not channeling my inner Marvin Andrews. But as things stand right now, I just feel the weekend there was fatal. I just don't think we could have afforded that. And I do agree that points will be dropped elsewhere. I actually think if Motherwell play the way they played in the first half on Saturday, that neither Celtic nor Hearts can be too confident of getting 3 points at Fir Park. But I, I look at our 4 remaining games and I just don't think we're going to gain enough points from it to win the title. But
Lee, head
please
or heart?
make me wrong.
No, I'm going hard, but with a little bit of head thrown in because I do genuinely believe that we are. I know people will be laughing at this, and I'm prepared to be shot down, but I believe we are a better side than Hearts. We're a better side than Celtic. I think we've got a little bit more in reserve. I think the games coming up against them will prove that. I think we'll win both. As crazy as it sounds, I know that we've let ourselves down in a couple of games, but does it mean we're definitely going to win the title? Of course not, but I don't think it's over the way that some of our fans believe it's definitely over now. I think we can go and win both of these games, and the final day will take care of itself at that point. But I don't think everyone's saying we lose next Monday, it's definitely finished, and of course I agree with that. I think on Monday night we'll be right back in this. So let's just see.
Well, thank you, gents, for your comments this evening. And if I say to the people looking in, keep believing, enjoy your football. Don't be too despondent. And also, as I say, if you look at some of the great victories that our club's achieved over the years, then enjoy your football to the very last minute of the very last game this season. I truly believe that's where we're going to end. But whatever happens, I'm sure that we'll be back to see you at some point, and whether hopefully that's a wee championship party, or if it's part of the Glasgow Rangers story that it's not this year, then so be it. Anyway, thank you for being with us, gents, and thank you for everybody that's tuned in to view us.
Thank you.